Welcome back to Carneades.org. Today we're going to be looking at objections to the somatic approach to personal identity. If you haven't checked out my earlier videos on the somatic approach or what personal identity is, you might want to do that now. This is also a very important video because this is video number 99 here at Carneades.org, which means, if you've been following along, that the next video is going to be a video doubting, debunking, questioning Descartes' famous indubitable statement, I think, therefore I am. And it's actually pretty important that we do personal identity first because it will help us understand how we're doubting that. So, without further ado, we'll move on to the somatic approach. As we remember from before, the somatic approach is basically saying you are identical to the animal that you are in the same place as, the thinking animal. And you have the same identity conditions as that animal or as that body. The problem is, this would mean if you got a brain transplant to somebody over here, according to the somatic approach, you would in fact be a different person. Even if your brain was transplanted, even if all your memories moved on, all of your thoughts, because your body died, because that animal that you were in died, you would be a different person. To make more sense of this, because brain transplants are a little weird, imagine Jean-Luc Picard walks into a transporter, and he gets transported somewhere else. For those of you who aren't Star Trek fans, basically the transporter scans you as you are. It puts you into electricity and data, and then it pops you out in another transporter in another location. According to the somatic approach, every time that Jean-Luc Picard steps into a transporter, he stops existing. He dies, and another captain, a different person, shows up on the other side. Because it's a different body, it's a different animal, it's a different creation that shows up on the other side. So there have actually been hundreds, if not thousands, of Captain Jean-Luc Picards, or anyone who's been through a Star Trek transporter. If there was a way to put your mind in a hard drive, which theoretically there should be, because all your mind is a bunch of neurons going on, it's a bunch of physical molecules there, even if your thoughts and memories were kept intact, you would be dead, and a new mind would now have been created. You would no longer be identical with yourself from any time past, according to the somatic approach. These things are pretty counterintuitive, and it's one of the reasons people would favor the psychological approach, even though it has its problems as well, over the somatic approach. We also have the original problem that we started with when we were talking about identity. Whenever we're talking about having a identity that's based in the physical world, we're going to have the problem of Theseuss Ship. Basically, your cells are constantly dying and being replaced. The question is, at what point do you start being a different person? After you lose a couple cells? After you lose a lot of your cells? Maybe more than half your cells in your body. At what point are you a different person? Once you've lost all of the cells in your body? If you still think that you're the same person, once again, consider the problem of Theseuss Ship. What would happen if someone took all of your old cells and reconstituted them, brought them back to life? Which one of these yous is actually you? It seems to be a question that the animist, the somatic approach, is going to have a tough time answering. So, that was the psychological approach and the somatic approach. Those are the two main approaches to dealing with the persistence question and the problem of identity, and it should be clear that we have offered pretty sufficient, in my eyes, objections to both of them. They're both pretty questionable, and when you get down to it, fairly unintuitive. This leaves us primed for our next video with no good sense or no stable idea of personal identity. Watch this video and more at Carneades.org, and stay tuned for video number 100 coming up next. Doubting, I think, therefore I am. Stay skeptical, everybody.